3, 2, 1, go. Hello there, people and listeners of the Hungry Podcast. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome James Cochran and Dan Henry onto the podcast. James and Henry are co-founders of 1251, a restaurant in Islington and around the clock. They make insanely delicious food. James worked under the revered chef Brett Graham at the Ledbury before becoming head chef of the Harwood Arms. In 2018, he was the winner of the Great British Menu, which is, hands down one of my favourite programmes of all time. They've recently done a collab with the guys at Sauce Shop, the Scotch Bonnet Chili Jam, which is now in, I think, 500 Sainsbury's stores. And we talked about it with James and Pam on the podcast, but it's just unreal. It's really, really, really delicious. Guys, I'm super pumped for this, so thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So, kind of where I wanted to start this, and I think, James, with you, you've got this really kind of interesting juxtaposition of DNA. So you've got, you're kind of part from St. Vincent. I think your mum's from St. Vincent, your dad's from Scotland. It's kind of like this, delicious kind of paradox, really. And I'd love to kind of jump in to the weeds of kind of how those two opposing kind of cultural influences shaped your cooking. And I read an article, and it says, I knew from the age of about 9 I wanted to be a chef. My dad was all about education. Yeah. I went to a nunnery, which I still wake up in cold sweats about. But instead of becoming a lawyer or a banker or something, I was always going to cook. And I'd love to know, what were the significant events, say from the age of 7 to 9, that made you think, right, I want to be a chef?
Yeah, I think it was the old school tradition of mum would stay at home, the dad would go and work. So summer holidays, not having a lot of money, we would stay at home and try to use the resources that we had around us, surrounded areas. So I'm originally from Whitstable in Kent, so I'd be going to the beach, but then a lot of time we would do a lot of home cooking. So a lot of baking cakes, a lot of banana breads, and just tons and tons of baking. And my mum kind of knew that I was getting a lot of pressure from my dad at a very early age. And she was like, there's no pressure in what you want to do. And I was like, well, I think I want to bake. I think I want to cook. So I kind of really stuck in my mind. And it was a really simple direction of what I wanted to achieve. I've always been quite ambitious and always wanted to push myself as far as I could go. So I kind of knew my next stepping stones of what I wanted to do to lead me up to where I am now.
And what would you say, how did your mum actually pour sort of gasoline on that and beginning passion? What does she do to bring that through?
Well, I think what it was as being a kid, and still now, you love everything sweet, don't you? The naughty stuff is the good stuff. As we just spoke about how our top size has gone up by a couple in the last 5 years. So it was just do you know what I mean? Just having something with 4 ingredients of flour, eggs, butter, sugar, and working out a ratio of that or following a recipe and adding flavors into that to producing a beautiful cake was kind of mind-boggling. And it kind of ignited a spark in my mind that this was something really interesting that I really wanted to kind of look into, progress and learn more. And to be fair, baking is not my strong point still to this day. But I think at the time it was just simple things. I think in this day and age now where technology seems to be the youth of today for the kids. And I found baking was a good connection that me and my mum had together. And through over the course of years, I have so many wonderful memories of if it was baking or cooking together with my mum as I got older. And that was just really the kind of foundation for me to kind of progress in where I wanted to be.
And would you say, what are the kind of the core values you your parents installed in you that you then use with the, leading 1251, leading in the kitchen? Are there any core principal values? Because I think it's really interesting. Scotland and the Glaswegians are super hard-nosed and tough and resilient, and then kind of the Caribbean side, and that's why I think it's so interesting, is seems to be like more creative. Obviously, literally, if you're comparing the weather, like you've got snot-ridden rain with gorgeous white beaches. You know what I mean? I'd love to kind of dive into that.
And it was interesting because every year it would alternate. So I go to Caribbean for 1 year and Scotland for 1 year, and it was miles apart. I think what my parents were, it was, I mean, from an early age, I had to go out and work. I remember like I was washing cars by the time I was 12, 13. And my dad was been a hard grafter throughout his whole life. And he worked hard to get us to where he wanted to be as a young family. But the thing that really stuck with me was that nothing's impossible and you can achieve anything with hard work. And that kind of stuck with me throughout our whole career. And as me and Dan have now got a couple of businesses and the products, we find that we're working even harder. We're not kind of slowing down. And every year we say to ourselves, we'll try and take a step back. But I think it's the foundations that Dan has as well as myself, that we have this DNA inside of us to carry on pushing ourselves and carry on pushing each other. And we're just solid grafters, and nothing, I mean...
I don't know, mate. I'm done at the moment.
I think we're all right for it.
but I mean, I definitely, that's something I want to talk about, because I think we'll get onto it in a bit, but I think there's this slight dangerous thing the more we talk about burnout, because I think people, if they see 1 minute of stress or one setback, they're like, fucking hell, I'm burnt out. And then I just think it's quite dangerous the more we talk about it like that. And I think why I love and revere chefs, and you know, the hours you were putting in at the Ledbury, and Dan, we can kind of explore. I want to like jump into you and what you're doing at the Navy, because you worked at the Navy, and I think there's a lot of hard graft and lessons you must have taken from that, which you then implement, you know, running 1251 and the other businesses. Are there any significant lessons from being in the Navy that you now implement at 1251 or running the ship there?
I don't know if there's sort of...
Good pun,
yeah. I practiced that one earlier, mate.
In terms of the Navy's very good at structure, and obviously having, you know, anyone above you, there's always someone above you kind of thing, and like that kind of respect and leadership side of it all is obviously you can bring it into civilian world, but it's super strict in the forces. So I wouldn't want to kind of instill that into a civilian business. But the second most important thing that I learned being in the military was just like teamwork, and like just the constant everyday thing about like having a good team of people and instilling that like kind of team ethic into everybody. So I think that's probably the biggest thing I've brought into 1251, where everyone, we're very blessed, aren't we, Jar? Like, we have, great team. Even, they start living with each other, they go out with each other. They, our general manager started here as a waiter. People like built, there's like structure to it all, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think that side of it has always been something that I've always wanted to like instill.
The team is the core beating heart of 1251.
Yeah.
And Dan and myself have really implemented and really tried to build like a great team spirit throughout the whole, from the kitchen to the front of house.
Yeah.
Everyone is treated as equals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no one's better or higher than anyone else. And we have such a young team here, and when people come to the restaurant, they have such a personal touch that they get from the front of house. And I would look at reviews online, and a lot of it is talked not just about the food, but spoken about the service that they get, how it's so welcoming, so personal, and that's that Dan has implemented into the team in the front of house. I think it's very rare to have that in London, because it's very kind of rigid and just there's a formula to some kind of serving that I find very boring. And every time I've eaten here, or friends and family have come here, they speak so highly of the service, and it's great because probably our average age of our front of house staff is probably like 22 years old. So they're all young kids, you know what I mean? But that's a good thing, because you can implement the ways and systems that you want to work, how you want the 1251 team to run. And it's a great place to be.
It's really interesting because I'm a massive fan of Anthony Bourdain, and there's an episode he did with Marco Pierre White, and I think Marco says that everyone thinks a restaurant is food, service, setting, and he basically says no, it's setting, service, food, like the service, and that can make up for. Obviously the food is mandatory, right? You can't be serving like chicken nuggets, I mean, but like and I think it's really interesting because it's like that's the kind of the je ne sais quoi that gives you the edge. And as you say, like London, there's proliferated with so many restaurants, and it's like how you find that edge, and that's kind of what I'm always obsessed with, and I think our listeners will find real value in that. So when you said with the team, it's like our listeners will be building brands, a bit like, you know, Pam and James at the Sauce Shop, and one of the biggest hurdles they had is that there's a massive difference between kind of almost like the office staff and the guys in production, and getting that bit right, that kind of that to marry up was really a struggle for them. How do you guys do it? So is it like literally on a weekly basis? Like, is you going for drinks? Like, how are you giving feedback? Like all these, I'm really trying to dig into that because I think there'll be lots of.
This will be Dan's question to answer.
It's a daily thing. I mean, we have. There's certain things that we follow. Like, it's like a religion that 12:51 like closes down on. Oh,
that's all right.
Sorry, my little dog's here. We'll cut this bit out.
No, I like the authenticity,
Lucy. So every single Monday, 12:51 closes down. So there isn't like no one can send a message, no one can send an email. The restaurant's closed. Everyone kind of forgets about 12:51. It's like not a day to be talking about it. Personal life is extremely important, built around into this business. So Mondays are, you know, that's our day of rest, and everyone kind of closes away. And then it's like, apart from that, it's six days a week. It's just a daily thing. You know, I'm here every day, telling the staff, you know, like people have been waiting like weeks or months to come to 12:51. And this is like, I don't know, you've never been to this restaurant before, but it has like a kind of real like house.
Yeah, very personal touch.
Yeah, it's like a house kind of feel to it. It's like, you know, it's very like, you know, on top of each other and all that kind of stuff. And
bit,
you know,
rough around the edges.
Bit rough around the edges, but like it's coming into your home. And I telling the staff every day, you know, like people that come here, they're like, you know, they've been waiting for it, and like we need to make sure that we deliver that kind of that, you know, that theatre to it all of you know, welcome into their home, serving that, giving that kind of service and that level of food. And then I mean, talking about like team kind of ethic, and not team ethic, but like, you know, we do go out for pints every Sunday. We finish work early. The last table's at 6 p.m. We're quite famous for our Sunday roasts, so we normally get to finish at like 7, 8 o'clock on a Sunday evening, and then it's straight down the pub for some drinks. Obviously, we're not open on Monday, so don't have to worry about hangovers. Just like, and making sure like my management team or the supervisors, etc., are always giving like praise and well dones and thank yous to everyone else that's here, and just having that positive kind of attitude with it. Because really, in essence, like I know it's a hard job in terms of on your feet, but the actual job isn't, you know, it's not a horrendously difficult job to do. You just need to, you know, it's mentally kind of tiring because of all the positivity you've got to give for hours upon end. Yeah. But I guess that's the kind of people that like doing it, you know. You wouldn't be here otherwise, I guess.
Yeah, well, if you own a business, you know what I mean, it never really kind of stops. There's always tomorrow, there's always tomorrow, there's always tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you're always thinking ahead, you're always looking at Christmas, Easter and things, so it's non-stop.
Yeah.
But it was, for me, it was quite hard to get my head around at the beginning. Just the relentlessness of it, especially when we opened the restaurant. But now you have to kind of enjoy it, and it's just part of life. Yeah,
there's so much in there, and what I loved what you said there, Dan, is, you know, we both said, I think it's a bit rough around the edges, but it's authentic, and I think the hardest thing to do, and it's the thing I'm kind of obsessed with, is how people put their authentic edge onto things, and it's really interesting how you kind of bring the team in to do that. Look, restaurants get like criticism and negative feedback, and I think lots of our listeners will have to expose themselves to that in order to succeed. Like, how do you guys navigate that with bad criticism, and not necessarily against you, but say it's against maybe one of the waitresses or waiters? Like, how do you make sure the ship still keeps going forward?
You're not going to be able to please everybody. I mean, we've had, 1251 is a very relaxed atmosphere, as we said. We've had people walk in here with like tuxedos and ball gowns, and then they walk through the door and they're like, oh shit, this is not that kind of place. And
so already straight away you're on the back foot.
Yeah, exactly. You're expecting that 1-2 star review to hit your Google within the next week from that one. So I appreciate, you can't please everybody, and there's this whole thing that I've always found odd, but like when people review you on Google or TripAdvisor and stuff, some companies or some businesses find it like you have to contact every single person and like either say thank you for your feedback, or like if there's a complaint you need to address it. I'm not too sure I don't think you do. I think if you get like a 1-2 star review and it's we didn't really like the place and the food wasn't what we thought it was going to be, well, that's fine.
That's okay.
That's absolutely fine. It wasn't for you. It's not a problem. Obviously, if they're writing, the toilet seat was on the floor, the staff were, et cetera, there's a different thing. But obviously, we'd never have that. But yeah, you're not going to be able to please everybody. And I would say that 95% of people that come here love it. So I'll take or will take the 5% that don't, I guess.
And that's what I was about to say.
I love that, and I think for our listeners, it's brilliant. I genuinely believe if you try and please everyone, you'll please no one. You just kind of end up being this vanilla thing in the middle. So I think doing what you want to do is brilliant for our listeners, and making sure it is authentic to you. Where I want to go now is the Ledbury. It's chilled. We'll leave that.
You just think someone tried to break in.
Oh, really?
Hang on. That card's upstairs. The flat's unlocked, isn't it? Wants to have the door locked. Stop. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Do you have someone trying to break in?
No, we had someone we have a front door, and then when you open the front door, in front of you there's a set of stairs, and to the right is another door. That you open the door on the right and you're in the restaurant. The stairs lead up to some flats that are getting built. But some people off the street keep coming in, and someone sold a bike that was up there the other day.
Oh God.
I think someone just tried to walk in and then they heard Lucy. Ah, who is that?
Sorry about that.
No
man.
worries, mate.
Sorry,
No,
mate.
no.
Apologies. Sorry, Dan.
I've had worse before. I had one guy come on and slag off our like biggest customer, well, slag off Waitrose in Sainsbury's. He was like, and I was like, mate, we're gonna have to cut out about 15 minutes of that. So there's absolute, I was like,
really?
mate, come on, like, because I work for a brand called Manny Life. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like a peanut butter brand. We're pretty pally with the sauce shop. But yeah, so I'm in that sort of retail space by day. That's all right. So we'll jump back in. Yeah, so
St Vincent, I think it was.
No, it was the Ledbury.
No?
I want to talk about Ledbury. Yeah, close. Yeah. So I want to talk about the Ledbury, because the Ledbury is this revered 3-star restaurant, and it's meant to be doing, the most amazing food. And I read this article, and James, you said it was a hard, intense kitchen. Sometimes you were doing 18-hour days, 12 days in a row. But it was the best place I've ever worked because of Brett Graham and his attitude. A lot of top restaurants will have you working like a robot, but Brett would push you, give you more responsibilities, and make you think for yourself. And I think there's a lot of parallels between running a successful kitchen and running a successful business in terms of like the organisation, the leadership, the pressure, the creativity. There's so many parallels, and I kind of want to like pull at these and unpack them a little bit. But I think the best place to start is like, what did it feel like on your first service at the Ledbury? Like, what did that actually feel like walking through those doors?
So I kind of come back from travelling, and my mum was like, "There's no reason for you to live in this house anymore. You need to move out of the house." So I had looked at 2 restaurants. One was Maze by Jason Afford at the time. The other one was Ledbury, and I had trials with both. And the Ledbury, all the staff there were really nice, but they were playing the game quite well because they needed a staff member, so they were all very, very nice, giving me bits of food and things and being very nice. So I was like, okay, I'll take a job there. So I hadn't had a flat, had to find a flat in 2 days. So basically got there, I started on Monday, found a place on Sunday, moved out of the house on Sunday, started work on the Monday, went in, and it was just the unknowing of going from working at no Michelin-star restaurant to 1-star restaurant, and just the amount of pressure that I was going to be putting myself in for the next 5 years. As over time, it got a lot more easier, but there was excitement, nerves. The first service, I mean, at the Ledbury at the time, we were quiet. We would do 2 covers for lunch and like 8 covers for dinner. So it wasn't a real kind of service until the first Friday when we had like 50 for lunch and 50 for dinner. And that was a very scary place to be.
Why was it so scary?
It was not just... Brett expects a high standard. He expects you to push yourself. There's no room for error or mistake. And there were a lot of mistakes coming from my side. I was very nervous. I was shaking. I had not been in the kitchen for a few months. So I've been away traveling. Let's just say it wasn't the best service that I had. And I felt the raft of that by a lot of shouting towards me, a lot of swearing, lots of food thrown back at me. And that went like that for a few months. I lost a lot of weight from it. I mean, but it was just relentless. And I don't even know how I'd done it. It was, do you know what I mean? You're getting home at 2:30 in the morning. And you're back up at like 6 o'clock in the morning to get there for like 7:30. And in the winter time, you never see daylight because it's in a basement. So you would come in the dark and leave in the dark. It was a very strange place to be. Probably like with down with the stubs. And I think 3-4 months, it was just, I mean, I was going home quite emotional. It was a very old style kind of kitchen. If you fucked up in the kitchen, Brett would probably let everyone know that you fucked up, and then he would go pretty ballistic at other people around him to let him know that it was my fault.
Is there any examples, if you feel okay to disclose?
I best not
Okay,
say.
best not say.
I best not say. Yeah, it was an intense kitchen. I mean, all I can say is if 11 Australians in the kitchen, I'll say no more. It was quite a racial kind of kitchen. But anyway, it only made me stronger, made me more hard-skinned. I think that kind of situation where it was that I had that thing in the back of my mind saying that nothing's impossible. You come and push yourself, prove to these people, prove to yourself that you can rise above this all. And then I end up being there for 5 years. I end up really kind of being a core member of the Ledbury, and we went from 1 star to rising 2 to 2 star, and we became the, I think, 11th best restaurant in the world. I mean, the great thing about it was that it was like Brett, it was us against Brett. So he was pushing every single staff member in there. I think in this day and age now that you can't get away with that anyway in the kitchen of how it was back then. Not at all. But I mean, at the time it had its ups and downs, smiles and frowns, I would like to say. It took about 3-4 months where it was very intense, but after that it was an enjoyable place to work. My body got used to the hours. I mean, I remember like getting on the bus. I used to live in Camberwell Green. I could get Notting Hill and waking up in Shepherd's Bush Depot, then just getting off the bus and going back to work again. Like episodes where like I would get on the tube and wake up, like I would get on at like Notting Hill, wake up in Stratford, then jump on the other side, then wake back up in Acton, then jump back on again. Like sometimes, yeah, it was just getting used to those. And then before we had like apps, so I used to get a bus and it used to take me like an hour to get home, hour and a half, to find out if I walked down 5 minutes down the road, the bus only takes half an hour to get home. Did that for about 3 years until I realised the bus basically, and that was the perfect route to get home. But yeah, it was good fun. I've got some great friends out of it, and that was kind of like the core foundations of what I learned from the Ledbury is what I've kind of brought into 1251. None of like the actual like dishes, but just the foundations to cook the perfect piece of meat or make the perfect sauce. I've taken those foundations and brought it into 1251.
Yeah, there's so much in that, mate, and I think one of my favourite books of all time is this book called The War of Art, and and you can almost say like cooking food is art, and they basically talk about this thing of resistance. You just have to keep, as you said there, it's relentless, it's pressure, just showing up even if you don't want to. And I think the more you do that, as you said, it gives you thick skin, it makes you stronger. So now if you've done those 5 years at the Ledbury, not saying that what you're doing now is a walk in the park, but it builds that kind of resilience armour. Were there any moments, like, I suppose first question, were there any moments when you're like, sort of, fuck this, I want to stop? And in that moment, like, what were the voices in your head that made you say, like, I need to keep going? Because I think loads of our listeners are founders trying to set up business or restaurants, and they're going to have that voice in your head, and it's like, I really find it fascinating how you deal with that voice.
Well, it's interesting because I think, what was this? This is going, maybe 13 years ago or so. I don't really kind of think that like anxiety and mental health was really kind of spoken about, where we openly talked about back 12, 15 years ago compared to what it is now. And I mean, I was battling with myself, just the pressure that I had upon myself, and every minute of the day you had to be on your A game to be able to make sure you do that perfect, producing the best you could do. I think for me it was just, I always had this kind of thing like a 5-year plan of what I wanted to go and what I wanted to achieve, where I wanted to be. And I always kept having that on the back of my mind, that I knew after I worked at Ledbury that I wasn't going to be going back into doing that intense cooking again. Or I think that for me that was just kind of like, I've got the foundations now. Now's my time to chill out a little bit more and kind of find where my next kind of path and direction is going to be. But I think for me, I always had that in the back of my mind that nothing's impossible. I think for me, I kept pushing myself every day, and I don't think that's a good thing. I think back then it was fine for my body to go through that, but Do you actually know I disagree? I don't think anyone should be able to do those intense long hours that I was doing. I don't think that's healthy for anybody. I think as we see this day and age now that your health and happiness is the most important thing. I think back then, that's not the case. I think what we learned a lot from lockdown, I think what everyone's learned is that we need to build a good foundation, as we spoke about the team of 1251. I've kind of gone off sideways now, haven't I?
No,
I mean, like,
perfect.
here, like, the kitchen, like, we don't let any of our staff work more than 48 hours a week. So, like, for instance, like, our chefs are on, like, 48-hour-week contract, which is basically 4 days. So four doubles and 3 days off. 3 days off every single week without fail. And if there's an issue that we have to do, then we obviously bring in someone like agency. So, like, we make sure that that's the kind of, like, you know, the level we set ourselves, and we don't want like what James had or other chefs have had in the past of like when they're the Ledbury and Harvard Arms. I appreciate it probably gets you to a level, but you know,
what's the point?
Well, I don't know what's the point, but like, because the point there is, you know, you've got that base had whatever it got to, but I think, you know, it can't be like that anymore. It shouldn't be like that anymore.
No, I agree. I almost think there's like a sliding scale here. It's like on the right-hand side, you've got 18-hour days at the Ledbury where you're like almost like a masochist, just grafting yourself to the point where your like spleen's about to rupture. Like that's not healthy. But then on the other side, I think here, and what I'm worried about is the more we talk about burnout, is that the one iota of stress and people are like, fuck, I'm burnt out. I need to go and have a spa day. And I think we need to find our point in the middle. And what my worry is we're swinging too much this way, whereby everyone's talking about burnout and you're not. People are becoming less resilient is what I'm worried about. And I think what you guys have done there is.
I mean, COVID changed everything. Like, and it's changed hospitality for the better, I would say. And you know, there's a lot of people have left hospitality since COVID happened, and you know, it's so hard to find, especially like chefs, like trained chefs at the moment are like gold dust, if I'm honest. But I think, I mean, obviously COVID has changed hospitality, but I think it's changed it for the better. It's made, especially people like myself and Jane, like owners or, you know, big companies that, you know, they need to like be better at like, you know, giving staff their, you know, the better contracts, better pay, better time off, etc., etc. And then really, I know what you're saying there about, you know, we shouldn't go too far some way, but then also it's us, like the owners and the companies, big companies, it's our job to make sure that those levels don't drop or those standards don't drop. But there has to be a meet in the middle with better standards of working for the guys that work here.
Yeah, I think, like Dan said, COVID was an absolute game changer. I mean, I kind of came in, we opened 12:51, and I had such an extensive menu. I had like 5 snacks, 5 desserts. Then we had a concept called Land, Garden, and Sea. We had 3 dishes each, so about 18 odd dishes on the menu. And I sat there and we were kind of just sitting there. It was like, it's just too much going on. Like every day we're pushing, and there's just so much food on the menu, and the wastage is going to be higher. And I thought, okay, why not just do a 5-course tasting menu? Make it super accessible, super affordable. And then from there, you've gone down from, you know, 4 chefs looking after 5 dish each to now looking after 2 dishes with a special and a snack on there. And it's just a lot more happy environment to be in. You're not pushing, not running around. You know exactly what you're doing in the kitchen. We change the menu monthly so it keeps the brains of the chefs' minds ticking over properly. It doesn't keep them too complacent. And it's just it's the best formula that we've done since opening 12:51. It's just changed it by a million miles.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's real, like, there's beauty in simplification and reducing things and essentialism and cutting away the noise. But it's very hard to do. It's because people try to overcomplicate like everything. I also think what I love about your logos, the 12 and the 51, it's almost like that. The 12 could be like the upstairs in the dining room, and the 51 could be the kitchen. It's almost like, I think that's really symbolic. of how they're too into.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome,
it's unreal. And
yeah.
just to go back to what you said about, because obviously you went from a 1-star at the Ledbury to, was it 3 stars when you left?
No, it's never been 3. It's
2
only
stars.
been 2
Sorry,
stars. They went from 1 rising 2 to 2 stars, and then that's when it just went like through the roof. I mean, we were. I think at that era, I think we were untouchable. I don't think there was any other restaurant in London that was anywhere close to us. What we were doing, what we were achieving, the amount of pressure was going on there. I mean, it was just a phenomenal place to be. I mean, everyone was just on fire. It was just like, we felt invincible. Honestly, we did. Like, we were getting mad reviews. We got like, at the same time, we got 1 star at the pub. Then we got 11th best restaurant in the world, and we weren't even the top 50 best. We weren't in the top 100. So go from being a restaurant that was just on the corner of Ledbury Road to now being known internationally was just like amazing. And Brett kept our egos on a lock. We didn't get carried away, and his mind just like so sparked in his mind to start doing absolutely bonkers things with food, and it was just great fun. And it was just being in that kitchen where,
What bonkers thing with food would you do?
Making like ash ice cream. So basically getting a cigar, smoking a cigar, putting the ash into ice cream, and then we will complement that with a certain like dessert wine, and then just doing like
Cigar ash ice cream?
Yeah.
It's odd.
Yeah.
Is it nice?
I mean, smoked ice cream.
Okay.
Was
it like Hamlet's or was it nice one?
I think the Churchill's.
I thought you were going to
Don't know.
put like Benson Hedges on there. I was like, that sounds horrendous.
Yeah.
Where would you smoke them in the kitchen?
Outside the back, basically.
So just a bunch of chefs outside smoking cigars.
Yeah, and then basically, I mean, we're not taking it down, were we? So just bang, using that, and then turn it ice cream.
Amazing.
And then like we were doing like.
I could just imagine like loads of like
chefs, yeah,
hungover, like tired-looking chefs stood outside.
That would have been a good picture, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
Would have been a good picture, like the Marco Pierre white picture of him like sweating, just like a load of chefs, just like broken outside the back, just like blazing cigars.
There's sorry, mate.
Yeah, like we're just doing some mad stuff with food that I didn't think had really been seen before, and it was just a great place to be.
And I definitely want to get onto that in a bit, but what I'm trying to dig at now, I suppose, is lots of our listeners are either trying to run restaurants, brands, businesses, and they want to be, I suppose, untouchable, invincible, like you guys were like at the Ledbury in that moment of time. What if you could distill it down to 3 things? Like, why were you guys different versus other restaurants? What was the 3 reasons you were on fire? You were like Arsenal, basically, the Invincibles.
Don't say that. Hard work, dedication, the trust we had in each other, and perfection. That doesn't exist in my eyes, but we're all striving to produce perfection.
Yeah, that's yeah. I think with
perfection doesn't, because what you're chasing.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Because you've got to look, it's like you're always trying to be better than you were yesterday, always trying to push, but sometimes you have to sit there and just accept that, okay, it's the best we can do.
No.
But at that time, it was the complete opposite. We were just trying to push perfection.
Yeah.
And it was just a core unit. Like, it was just, we think we had the same team there for like 2 years. And I mean, you can sit and work hours in that kitchen. There must have been something good happening in there for people to stay there. And it was just one big family. You know what I mean? Like, everyone kind of looked out for each other. It was an enjoyable place to be compared to what it used to be. I think like Brett was kind of like, I think so for us, like I Michelin star doesn't really bother me at all. But I think Brett kind of got to that level of like, okay, now Ledbury's on the map. Now Ledbury's known worldwide. he wanted to achieve that second star. He got that, and I think from there, it just, I don't know. I can't explain.
I mean, 2 stars massively. It makes you.
Yeah.
It makes like anyone who's coming to London.
I think.
You'll know the restaurant, right?
I think it took a bit of pressure off himself in some ways. I think it's something some people wanted to achieve that. He achieved that goal. And then from 2 stars to 3 star, I mean, God, I mean, some people have probably been on 2 stars for many years, like Midsummer House. And been there for years on Zap Bain, 2 stars. And it's like, what does it take to get 3 stars? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's just so interesting because I think what you've said, and again, there's so many parallels with business. It's about, you know, the teamwork, the hard work, the perfectionism, the trust. I think the trust is a really interesting, you know, piece. And what, obviously, we've talked about how you guys do it as sort of co-founders and how you get your team to, you know, not burn out and not and feel like they're praised. But I would love to kind of explore sort of Dan and James and how you guys work as co-founders. Again, lots of our listeners will be in a co-founder partnership, and obviously it can be quite hard to build, or there can be times when the decisions, there can be conflicting interest in decisions. I would love to know kind of how you guys have built the trust and everything you're doing with not just 1251 but around the Cluck and the Scotch Bonnet Jam. Like, how did that come about, and how do you keep it intact?
I think like myself and James met. I had a pub, and we had a friend who worked in PR, and James was looking to start doing his own kind of thing outside of the Ledbury in his spare time, like a supper club, etc. And that's how we met. James came and started doing the supper club at the pub, and then once we realised that we wanted to do some bits together, we sat down and we came up with this idea of like these 3 things. So like we wanted to have a restaurant, obviously, that like showcases James's food. We wanted to have a concept, whether it's a bar or a different kind of food concept, but have a concept. And then thirdly was to have a product. So that was always like the goal, the 3 things that we decided to do. And from that particular meeting, it was like James was like, I will do all the food side of it, you will never have to worry about it. And I was like, well, I will make sure operationally, business wise, I will take charge of that side of it. And it's a very, very simple kind of like discussion we had, and that's the kind of road or the path that we've followed since like 2017 when we decided to do this. That's the exact same process that we've done the whole way through. So those 3 things, and like, you know, in the last like 6 months, we've completed that 3rd thing. So we've opened up this concept bar, which is Valderrama's, which with around the Cluck in it. So it's almost like 2 concepts in one place, but the product with Sauce Shop, the restaurant 1251. And I think that relationship, that partnership has always like been built and followed under those kind of like very easy rules of like James would always do the food side of it, and I'll always do the business side of it. Now, of course, we sit down and there's times to talk about like, you know, is this good enough? Is that good enough? Should we do that? Should we go that direction with this thing, etc., etc. But to be honest with you, it's very, very rarely that we kind of don't have the same kind of vision or mindset, which is probably like a really boring answer to give. But we're very similar characters, like same age, Aquarians, and we like the same thing generally. So it's kind of easy to go with each other. I guess maybe that might be our downfall, is that we're 2 alike. So we don't see it from a different angle sometimes, and we kind of maybe we like our way. But
well, the formula works so far, so I think we're just
but yeah, we're both like, we like to dream, and we both think that you can do it. Whether if it's like, you know, to sit here 2 or 3 years ago and say, you know, we're going to try and get a product into a national supermarket. I mean, that's a dream. It's a dream. Yeah. It's not even insane. It's a dream to do it. It's a lovely dream, but also, you know, we've worked hard and we've done it. You know what I mean? That sounds very simple and straightforward. It's really not. Obviously, we're blessed to meet people like James and Pam and Sauce Shop and their family there, and like, build that relationship that then gets us to that point of being able to launch a product with those guys. But nothing's impossible, right?
No, I love that, and almost again, because I know loads of people who are in co-founder relationships and trying to do business. I think what I'm learning from you guys is everyone tries to complicate and convolute everything. Whether it's too many dishes on the menu, you guys simplified it into 5.
Yeah.
Bosh.
Yeah.
In terms of your co-founder relationship, right? I'm doing this. I'm doing this. You're doing the food. I'm doing the business. There's beauty in simplification. I think the more you simplify things down, the easier it is to build that trust. And I think where potentially some of our listeners get wrong is that egos get involved. And it's interesting what you said about Brett bringing down the egos. It's like, well, Dan, if you suddenly started saying, "Oh, mate, let me in the kitchen," it's really interesting. And I think there's loads in that for listeners. And I want to talk about the Sauce Shop collab, and it's obviously now in loads of Sainsbury's stores. Talk me back to and get back to this perfection thing, because a lot of our listeners may create a product and they want to do all the sexy bells and whistles. They want to make it look banging on shelf, but actually, if you go home, the product's doesn't taste 10 out of 10 like unparalleled deliciousness, then you're not going to get that repeat purchase. And what I love about you guys, and I think I showed you a picture, Pam sent me some, I literally demolished it. Like, I was having it on fucking everything. It is so good. It's so crackers. I even had some on a bit of a roast dinner. My mum was looking at me like, "Mate, what are you?" Well, she didn't call me mate, but she was like, "Dan, what are you doing?" But it's really, really delicious. But how many iterations? Talk me through the process of that. Because I think for our listeners who are wanting to create brands, it's a great lesson in why product is the most important thing to begin with.
Take it away, Dan.
So there's a beautiful thing in this world, right? There's a beautiful thing that everyone can do, and that's take advice from other people that have done it or have got something similar in this world that you want to kind of recreate and copy. And before you go off and do it, the best thing to do is to sit down with those kind of people and get their advice, I guess. And that's what when we first opened. And we discussed this product in Scotch Bonnet Jam. It was like, right, well, I need to go and speak to some people. And there was one particular person that was just very lucky they were in London at the time, was James, the co-founder of Sauce Shop. So we opened a restaurant in August 2018, and he came here in November 2018. And we sat in the back of the restaurant, and we basically showed him the Scotch Bonnet Jam and asked for his advice on it, basically. And he gave us some amazing advice that, you are a restaurant, you're not a sauce company, and to do something like this, you probably need to have a range. Obviously, they were kind of saying, it's not for us at the moment, but maybe the best thing for you to do is go around lots of small factories and try and get it outsourced and make it your own product, and then build it from there, and then launch a second one, a third one, then you have a range, and then you can go on and so on. So that's exactly what I did. We did. So we ended up outsourcing it to a factory who made it for us. We designed our own label and et cetera. And then we launched it, I guess, the summer after, so 2019. And we spent 6 months trying to get it out there. And it was extremely difficult because at the end of the day, we are just a restaurant.
We're not salesmen.
We're not salesmen, and we're just a restaurant. And when you're calling up, for decades and decades, all this infrastructure of suppliers and buyers and all this kind of stuff, you start going into that world, and you kind of
your dad being a bit of a salesman.
Yeah, we were just trying to phone up delis around the country and just sell it into them, but they couldn't just buy it direct. You had to get on suppliers lists, et cetera, et cetera. And this whole world was just opening in front of me. And I was like, do you know what? I can't actually do this. We're not going to get anywhere with it. So we actually stopped making it around November, December 2019. And me and James sat down, and I was like, I need to come at this at a different angle. So I went away for a few months, spoke to some other people, and came to the conclusion that it was the best way to do it was to actually try and partner with a company. Now, obviously, that meeting with James always kind of stuck in my head. This is James from Sauce Shop. So I contacted James in February of 2020 and basically said, I've tried to do what you told me to do. It's not really worked. How would you fancy, maybe sitting down and seeing if Scotch Bonnet Jam could be something that we do with Sauce Shop? And then we arranged a meeting, and then COVID happened. March 2020, COVID happened. So that meeting never happened to talk about it. But then what we did do after those next few months was we built a relationship with Sauce Shop. So we started doing like homemade, like everyone at the time, we didn't know what to do, right? Yeah. COVID happened. So we were doing like recipe videos with Sauce Shop and using their products. And what we'd then done over the 18 months was build that like working relationship with James and Pam, that then gave us the opportunity last year to set up Scotch Bonnet Jam with Sauce Shop, which was an absolute blessing, and like we cannot ever say like how thankful we are to them for like taking us on in that way, because it doesn't happen very often. And like even though there are collaborations between other businesses, that Scotch Bonnet Jam is Sauce Shop and 1251s, and it's out there forever, and it's it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the working partnership with Sauce Shop is amazing. So yeah, very lucky and very blessed.
No, it's brilliant, because there's just there's so many people who are listening to this who are still making a product in their kitchen. In fact, I've got a friend who's got an overnight oats brand called the Good Grain, and she's still making it in her kitchen. And you're sort of banging your head against the wall, thinking, am I going to get there? Yeah. Am I going to get it into the Sainsbury's stores? So it's really reassuring. There's so much value in what you've just said there, Dan, about like how to.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like me and James were never ever going to be able to get it further than selling it in the restaurants, and because we are restaurateurs, we don't work in that game. Like your friend there who has that product now. That person is maybe completely different. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that the way that we've done it is the correct way to do it. It was just the way that suited our way of working. And we were blessed to meet someone like James and Pam who've taken it on. I'm not too sure how often that kind of happens, but it's a difficult world, and it's building that product. I mean, it must be an incredible feeling to have like make a range and then get it into like, I don't know, small deli shops. And then from the deli shops, you then build it up. And then it becomes this big thing. I mean, that must be so, an incredible thing.
Well, that's, but what I love is there's no exact science. So anyone listening to this, it's about pivoting, taking, like, we'll have to send you some of our peanut butter, but we started making this peanut butter from Argentina in a little rugby club kitchen in Wimbledon. We basically burnt the peanuts. We were like, fuck, we've got no money. So we blitzed the peanuts up, and we created a new type of peanut butter called deep roast. And that's what made us, like, got us on supermarket shelves, was a complete mistake. It's like really caramelized and burnt, and well, not burnt. Yeah, it's got this real deep flavor to it. But at the time, you're sat there thinking, oh God, we've just spent all our money, we spunked it up the wall on peanuts that don't work. Do you know what I mean? So there's loads in that. And how does it work? So are you guys selling it, or is it a Sauce Shop, like their sales team getting behind it, like just out of, how does that work?
It's actually owned by Sauce Shop.
Right. Okay. I see.
Yeah. It's basically now their product. In essence.
But then that gives you the awareness for 1251, which is unreal, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it won't be, spoiler alert, but it won't be the only one.
Wait. Here we go.
There'll be exactly.
There'll be another couple more, maybe 3 more.
Yeah, there'll be almost like, I guess, like a Sauce Shop in 1251 range, I guess.
That's unreal. And James, I think this would be really reassuring for listeners, because you created a product that was so good. I think you used it on Great British Menu, if I'm right in saying.
Yes, I did. Yes,
how many iterations were you going through? Because I think lots of our listeners will just want to rush to take a product to market. As I said, put the sexy bells and whistles on the branding. But if it doesn't taste insane, I demolished it so quickly, and that's the level you need to get to. But I'd love to kind of jump into how you got to that perfection.
Yeah, of course. I think the most important thing has got to be universal. I think at the present time, I had this idea for this Scotch bonnet jam maybe for 8, 9 years ago. So I had this restaurant called Restaurant Fix, and it was interesting because I basically left the library and I was library 2.0. And I went over to a place up with my friends, and I was just a carbon copy of the library. And I thought, okay, like I really need to kind of take a step back now because people are so interested in food and it's a fashion and people love to hear stories. So kind of my style of food is a representation of my mum and my dad. And in West Indian culture, lots of Scotch bonnets are used. So I had this Jamaican jet black fried chicken, and I thought what would be great would be a lovely Scotch bonnet jam. So again, going back to the sauce, I wanted to make it universal, but at the time I was thinking of my own palate. So it was very, very, very spicy. And it was literally just simple Scotch bonnets, tomatoes and sugar. And over the process of time, I started to learn a little bit more about it and really trying to perfect it. So getting the ratio of the vinegar to the chilies to the tomatoes. And then I burnt them, so that kind of give that natural kind of sweetness coming from the chili. Also a bit of earthiness and smokiness to it. And it was just a foundation of getting the balance right. And it was so funny because when we were producing it at the restaurant at the time, it was very inconsistent. It was 1 week it was really spicy. Next week it was just like the perfect consistency. And it was great because I had the 4 elements for the sauce. And then it was down to sauce shop and myself to really just get the most perfect balance of sweetness, acidity, sugar and spice. And as you have the Scotch bonnet jam, and people initially think of Scotch bonnets, they think, okay, it's going to blow your head off. But it's a nice like heat that kind of comes through at the end. And I think, in my eyes, there's so many chili sauce out there that blow your head off that are not enjoyable to actually eat or to have as a compliment. I think with this product that we've got, I think it is perfect and very universal for everyone to have, and it doesn't blow your head off. And I think that's a pretty good thing to do because so many, like I said, chili jams and sauces, they do just blow your head off.
We have this thing like between us, James and Pam, like this like fixation of like you need to try it. Once you try it, like you're sold. You're sold forever. You know, it's like like sriracha is like so crossover. Like people put sriracha in everything.
Yeah.
That's exactly how we see the Scotch bonnet chili jam eventually being. It's like I tell you, people, it's so wanky to say, but it's like the new sriracha.
No, but it is, mate. But like
it's like it crosses over and everything, like cheese, chicken, meat, bread, everything. It's just like perfect.
Yeah, I was like a rabid dog. I got home and just started. I think I got those Cars crackers and was literally just going straight into the jar. Like you can do it on anything. I think, but there's so much. So much.
Do you know what's interesting? Sorry, do you know what's interesting? That of course we've produced this jam, but I've only really have it at work. But then I had to do something. I was given some jams for one of my friends' birthday, and somehow could make it. So basically, I had like six Scotch bonnet jam jars lurking in my house, and then suddenly I just started to literally just become absolutely addicted to it. And I was just like putting it in so many things, like when you're just cooking up a piece of chicken or a piece of meat, just rub a little bit on top. Kind of like a nice little glaze on top of that. Yeah. And then finishing it just in like a rich stew or a curry or anything like that. And I just became, I even though it's my products and I should be obsessed with it, now I know why I'm obsessed with it. Because it's so
it's mate, honestly, it's unreal, mate. And what I love about what you guys, and I wanted to distill it down for our listeners, because as I was just talking about just now, is they want to rush that process. And what you guys did there, again, back to the simplicity piece, you simplified the recipe, you made it universal, which is super important, because I think lots of our listeners who are trying to get into a supermarket, it's like, is your product almost too niche? And that can be an issue. It's like, if you like a sauce that fucking blows your head off, that's sweet, but the country probably won't. So there's a brilliant lesson in there. I think the masses make it universal, and then also the more occasions. So the more occasions for a sauce, the faster you eat it, the faster you go back to the supermarket and buy it again. So the rate of sales there. So almost thinking about how many, and this is something we've been trying to do with our peanut butter, because we started in 2017. Most people thought peanut butter, you just have it on a bagel or toast. That's it. What we're like now, we're getting way more different uses. You can put it in curries, put it in milkshakes. Satay. Actually, we're trying to do a, funnily enough, a PBJ burger with you guys with that jam. That would be unreal.
Nice.
But yeah, speak to Pam and James about that. But yeah, I think that the more usages you've got, the better it drives the rate of sale. And I think it's a great lesson, like how to actually get a product to taste unreal.
How did it take you guys to develop yours?
So I mean, it was your peanut butter. So a long time, and we're constantly iterating it. But basically, our founder went to Argentina, started producing it over there, and realised it tasted like unreal. I, weirdly enough, met him at a pub as well, and I'd finished university. I was delivering cheese around London. Do you guys use the cheese wholesaler Harvey and Brocklets at all? I don't know if you know them. Yeah. But anyway, I was a man in a van delivering cheese around London, like thinking, fuck me, what am I doing with my life? Like, I've just literally got a degree, but it was but anyway, so I met him in a pub and I tried it, and I was like, game, set, match. Like, that's hands down the best thing I've ever tried. And then joined, and where it took us, but we're constantly iterating the product, constantly testing it, making sure it's, because the product is everything in food and drink, and so many brands try and make it look sexy, but if it tastes crap, then you're just, it's a waste of your time.
It's a saturated market, isn't it? So you need to kind of be a cut above the rest.
Exactly. And what I want to talk about now, and we can, both you can kind of take this, but is adding your authentic edge and personality into things. And I think it's really important, as you said just then, it's a saturated market. I think when you said, we were a carbon copy of the Ledbury when you opened that next restaurant, I think it's really hard to find your authentic edge and be yourself. But then when you find it, it's amazing. It's in all like facets. It's like, I don't know, Federer's like backhands, the way, I don't know, like Oasis play a guitar. It's like you could give anyone a guitar, but no one's gonna be able to play it like Noel Gallagher, or the way Messi dribbles a football. Is that authenticity and that like edge is I'm kind of obsessed with it. And then I'd love to know how you do that with your food. Like, how do you make sure, because every chef's got access to the same ingredients. How do you give it your edge?
I think going back to when we were saying before, when I was working at Fix, and I kind of sat there and I was just like, nothing of this is me. None of this food that I'm producing is me at all. And I sat there and I was like, at the time, I think my mum had passed away, and I was kind of thinking about like my childhood memories. A lot of my memories was going to Scotland and St Vincent and having some wonderful memories there of trying the local produce. And I sat there and I was like, okay, at this time, about 12 years ago, food had really gone through the roof. I think the pop-up scene was about, people were getting more and more into food. And like I said, it's becoming a cult and movement, and it's a fashion now. And I think the younger generation are so into their food, as well as everyone's into their food. And I sat there, I was like, okay, the first dish I produced was the Jamaican jerk butternut chicken, Scotch bonnet jam, corn nuts, coriander. Pop that out, and I would tell my staff at the time to tell a story behind it. What's the meaning behind all this? And if you associate yourself with Jamaican jerk chicken or curry goat, you really represent that of the West Indian roots. And the people really kind of got into that story. They really loved that. And through the transition of a couple of restaurants down the line to where we got to now, okay, I found, okay, my 5-course tasting menu and what I produce at 12.51, it has to be integral to myself. And the dishes that I try to represent is my Scottish roots, and we could be using raspberries, mussels, venison, whiskey, oats, and from the West Indian side, a lot of different spices, etc. And the kind of formula of the menu is always going to be part of those roots on the menu. And if you start off with the Jamaican jerk butternut chicken, the story behind that, you're basically locked in. You guarantee you're going to have a good time after that. And I think the style of my food really packs a punch, a flavour. And I think the style of how the menu goes from really kind of light to really rich and intense is a great journey. And I think if I can carry on that legacy of speaking about my parents in some way across food, people are interested because people come to the restaurant to come for my food and come for a great experience through the team at the front of house and the kitchen as well. And if I can carry on keeping that formula alive, carry on telling stories of my family, then fingers crossed people will still be interested in the restaurant will carry on still be busy.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's almost like, because I think authenticity, what I'm learning from you, mate, is it's like almost like, what is your story? So ask like, what is your story first?
Yeah.
And then the authenticity will come through that. And I think that's really interesting for our listeners. Because again, it's the same with brands on supermarket shelves. Like, obviously, I'm more privy to that industry. But if you look at protein bars, for example, every protein bar looks the same. Every oat milk now looks the same. And I don't know if you know the brand Minor Figures. Yeah, but like they're a great example of adding their authentic edge to things. And what they do is he's just like, mate, every challenger brand plays like a punk band. We play more like a groove band, and they're like super chilled, but you can just tell straight away like their soul and authenticity and story is in their product and or dishes. It's really interesting that's really interesting. Where I want to go now is Around the Clock, and I'm going to butcher the name. How do I say it? Because Around the Clock is in this Valderramas. And am I right in saying that because I had it at Taste of London, it was unreal. I had the curry one, the spice up your life. Yeah, it was banging. It was so unreal. I don't know. It was like it was unreal. I actually got the other one with the blue cheese mousse as well. I was like, really, really good. Is that the original one? Yeah. I was stuffing my face in the sun. It was unreal. But so is the goal with that is that to set up like a franchise? Do I read that correctly?
I think that's the website you may have looked at, but that's not.
Oh, is that because I was?
No. So we were basically in like lockdown when we came up with Around the Clock. There was just like so many people who wanted to like do something. So we basically just said like, if you want to do Around the Clock in, I don't know, York or whatever, or whatever, Leeds or whatever, you could we could give you like a small set of recipes to follow. So you could like maybe franchise it just during lockdown kind of era. But that's not the case now. No. Obviously now it's just like, obviously life is back to normal. Things are open, and you don't have that need of people wanting to do delivery and takeaway service so much anymore. And
so what are the goals with Around the Clock, and like how are you guys managing like your headspace and time? Because I'm asking this selfishly because I take on quite a few projects, and I'm super scatty with the way I do things. So it's like be interesting to learn how you do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's mainly I guess operationally it's obviously me, mainly with it. We have a very, very good operations manager that has lots of experience in bars and restaurants there, working there. So that obviously also helps. And the goal, I wouldn't say there is a goal at the moment. The goal was to get something like this open. So that's one goal that we've reached with it. It's very like early stages in its life. So far, we've only been open like 6 weeks, but I think there's a good opportunity there for us because it's basically having two concepts under one roof. So you've got like this kind of inclusive kind of sports, like a modern sports bar, a take on a modern sports bar basically, under the name Valderramas. And in Valderramas, the food offer there is Around the Clock. So they're almost like their own like concepts within one venue. So I think, I know the plan is for the next year. It's just to build that brand and build that venue and build those brands together. I think after that, I'm not too sure yet. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, it might be something like, I don't know, we'll open more or whatever.
Yeah, I think we just have to, like, here's this thing, like, you never want to spread yourself too thin.
No.
Because that's when you're kind of, you're not getting the best out of your business, not getting the best out of your team. So I think at the present moment, like, 1251 is just solid. You're guaranteed. We're 40, 50s, hundreds on doing 100 a week. We're basically fully booked most days here. And we've got the formula, we've got the team. The restaurant, like I said, like, it's very hands-on, me and Dan. So when it's like, aesthetically-wise, we're pretty happy, not a bit, but little bits and bobs can be done with it.
But it took us 3 years to get to that point.
Yeah. So Valderrama's could take a year or it could be longer. We just don't know. So it's where Dan can really work a lot on that and get that to where we both want it to be. Because as we spoke before, I'm the food side, he's the operational side. So I've got the formula there for the food. We've got a great team in there. And the feedback so far has been, as you know, has been good. So, I mean, I would like to have a few of them down the road, but it depends if we can be asked with that stress and that pressure of doing it. If we're comfortably happy with what we have here and Valderrama's and Scotch Bonnet Jam's going well, what's the point? Because we always need to say happiness is the most important thing. We've been working bloody hard for all our lives, so maybe in a couple of years' time we can start to enjoy ourselves a bit more and reap the benefits from it. So we'll see, but at this present moment, I'm pretty happy. I'm happy with everything.
It's brilliant. I think there's this for our listeners. You get to this thing. It's like, when is it going to be enough? And that's what a lot of the guests on this podcast have said. It's like, if you're just constantly going for that next thing, if someone gives you, you're just constantly chasing, you'll never be satisfied. It's like if you get
I mean, we've reached our goals. Like, we're very, very lucky again, and we're very, very blessed. Like, the three things that we sat down with each other at the very beginning and said, like, if we can get these three things done, we've done it. And we've done it. We've got those three things done: the product, the restaurant, the concept. And now it's just all about making those three things as good as they could possibly be. And I think that's probably the goal, isn't it? Just to make sure that they're successful, make sure they're...
I wouldn't mind a pub.
Yeah, no, mate. That'd be amazing. What?
But anyway, that could be
no. I think it's this, and there's so much in that. So I suppose the first kind of question is: look, there's shitloads of chicken shops in London. What are you doing differently? And this could almost be like adding on to this authentic edge bit we were talking about earlier. But like, what are you doing differently to make sure people are coming to you guys versus others?
I think here's the interesting thing. I think you're coming from a guy from a Michelin star background of cooking and doing fried chicken. So lockdown was a great thing for us because it was really about getting the best produce, breaking down the formulas from the thigh to the deep fried element to the table. And there's three different processes till the fried chicken has been fried, and really perfecting that, getting the right brining ratio, how long it sits in the buttermilk for, then it goes into like an egg white mix that goes into flour, the right flour ratio, and I think, and bring a lot of the compliments for around the clock from my background of working in Michelin star restaurants, and also from my roots, and also from 1251. And it's just about using the best produce. I think a lot of places a chicken shop, very fast food. Ours is a premium fried chicken shop, I would say.
Everything's made. Like, we don't buy anything in. So, like, everything you're reading on the menu, like whether all the sauces, the mayos, everything like that, everything's handmade. Like, we don't buy it in. You don't buy the mayonnaise and you don't buy anything. It's all made on site. Yeah. So that elevates everything in terms of like flavor, etc., etc. I think so that having that kind of like fine dining premium element to it sets us apart. We're very also lucky to have a lot of people that like James knows in the world of chefs. So we start doing like a guest chef series in October. There'll be like once a month. There'll be like a guest chef in there, which again is different to like your standard kind of like fried chicken.
The people that do it though. So
exactly, yeah.
And that was good fun because we did that in lockdown, and it was a great USP for us. Considering when every single bloody restaurant in London went on Deliveroo, for us to be a cut above the rest, we started doing collaborate with chefs, and it was good fun. And we're going to bring that back in October, and it's going to be chefs from all over the UK.
What chefs have you got lined up? Out of curiosity,
Lee Turman from Black Hat
Oh, amazing.
John from Anglo Thai. There's a guy up north called Kings of Feast. Luke French, Adam Handling. There's a cricket. What's his name? Will. Will from cricket. Will Balvin from cricket. There's a few lined up, but I would like. But then our new restaurant, Fallow guys, yeah.
Mensa from Tatali.
Mensa Tatali. Yeah, so that will carry on. I think that'd be great for the business.
No, I love that, and I think again, it's just a great lesson into again, it's kind of the crux of our conversation is this idea of simplicity and cutting away things, like making the food super simple, almost making the concept simple in terms of, okay, who do I know around me? How can I make it different with all these chefs? There's this real simplicity. It's genius, but it's often genius is simplicity. Cool. A few more questions to wrap up with, guys. And yeah, we'll go on from there. So this is a question I ask all guests, and it elicits pretty interesting answers. So there's this book called The Obstacle is the Way, and I all believe we have this obstacle that is actually at the time is seemingly insurmountable. Like fucking hell, like how am I going to get around this? But on reflection, paves the way forward. And I'd love to kind of know what for both of you has been one seemingly insurmountable obstacle that actually retrospectively paved the way forward.
COVID.
I was going to say, well, two things: money and then COVID.
COVID was. I mean,
there's quite a boring answer. COVID.
No, but like, what did it feel like when you had to shut the restaurant? Like, talk me. What did that feel like?
Well, I think for us, it was a learning curve. I think for us, it was a reflection to see where we were going wrong in our business, and we had a lot of time to procrastinate and think on things of how we can make ourselves a better business and be healthy and happier and look after ourselves a bit more.
I need obviously there was a lot of bad things that happened in that time. People like dying and etc. So what I'm about to say is like I appreciate, obviously, like for us it was a positive thing. Like that time, not COVID, but that time during COVID was probably a positive thing for our business. Like Jar said there, like it gave us that time to really look at because at the time we were doing things a bit wrong, and we did have, like as Jar explained earlier in the podcast, we did have that big menu and etc. And we were, we needed to simplify it all, and we work under this concept of like anyone and everyone, and that's what 1251 should be in all its areas, anyone and everyone. And we kind of maybe got to the dining experience was like not for anyone and everyone, and we like complicated it too much. So as Jar said, with the 5-course taster menu, etc., and remodeling our business around it, and just doing it that way and making it really affordable, etc., that kind of brought us back into line. So that's why it was a positive thing in that respect. Yeah.
That's so interesting. And I suppose that, again, that almost gave you the headspace to cut away and simplify things. That's so interesting. Yeah. And when you said you weren't for anyone and everyone, what do you mean by that? Like,
well,
lost direction a little bit.
Like, we weren't? Or
so when you said we were meant to be for anyone and everyone, and then you said you'd almost lost your way, because again, like lots of people lose their way on their journey, and it's just like how you reset the clock.
So like the menu we had, it was almost like I think that did it come too expensive? Maybe.
I think it was just a generic menu that you would get everywhere. Like we have to be honest and say that the business has not been plain sailing since we opened, and we did a few things out of a little bit in trying to think of ideas. So we did brunch offerings or changed the lunch concept, and we kind of lost direction of who we were as a core. And I think through a reflection to each other through lockdown and really kind of getting back to what we knew and what we are best and who we were. Because the business has been hard. It was hard for the first period before lockdown. It was hard after the first year. It was really hard.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Very,
standard restaurant, like
ups and downs,
ups and downs. If you can get past the first 3 years, then you kind of break through that kind of established mode where you do have a following and you kind of it is easier to survive. But first year is always great. Second year is the tough one, and if you can get through the third year, then I think you're there. But going back to that question, what did we do? Why wasn't it for anyone and everyone? Yeah, we became too muddled, and like Jar said, we offered too many different things. It just wasn't simplified enough. And then when you just go let's just make it 5-course taster menu every day apart from Sunday because we're really good for a Sunday roast, and it's just 40 quid. Everyone knows where they are. It's affordable. It looks great. It sells well.
And it tastes great.
Obviously. And everything around it can then become great. Like the staff know every single dish inside out. The confidence is there. The chefs know exactly how it's always perfect, etc., etc. We just change the menu every month to keep it fresh, because the hardest part of this business is repeat custom. Because we sit in that little bracket where it's it's a treat. It's not like going for 20, 30, 40 quid dinner, as in for 2 people. It's still £50, £60 a head by the time you've had drinks, etc. So we sit in that tough little bracket of repeat custom where we are a treat in some respects, but we've crossed over to that kind of it's not so much a treat because of our pricing, and that has made it for anyone and everyone, I would suggest.
No, it's really interesting.
Yeah,
it's great. It's really good, because I think what happened when lockdown happened, we had a real good kind of support from our local area of Islington. And I think kind of once we open back up, we're kind of established in Islington for the local residents. So they've been a great support throughout lockdown and been a great support since really kind of 12 weeks when opened. I think if we keep doing that, then we're on to good things. That makes sense.
It does. And again, the kind of the crux of this conversation is there's by simplifying things you can become more authentic. I think people get confused when they're trying to do too many things, as you said, become muddled. But about to ask final question, but just out of curiosity here before is we've talked about having these big dreams and these 3 things you wanted: the sauce, the chicken, and 1251 booming. How hard were you actually working? What were the hours on a daily, weekly basis to get to that point? Because I think I'm just curious.
When it's your own, you're never off, but it doesn't feel. It feels it's different because it's your own. So even though you might be doing an obscene amount of time on it, it doesn't feel that bad because it's your own. Does that make sense? Yeah. But I go to bed thinking about it. The first person I message every morning is Jar at 7 a.m. And it's something to do with work. Good morning, and then
sometimes it's morning, sometimes just straight away. But I think when it comes down to this, it's pretty simple. It's work doesn't feel like work; it just becomes normality. And with that normality comes that I don't have the stress, the strains, and oh my God, when I'm going to admit it to myself, it's just...
It doesn't feel like
It doesn't feel like that. It just feels like just normal. It's normal life.
No.
And I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like I'm just sitting there today and I'm buzzing about tomorrow coming into work in the kitchen. So I've
Yeah.
got some new recipes, new ideas I'm going to put in, so I'm buzzing for it.
But it's not like you're not in the kitchen like 6 days a week doubles, and I'm not in the restaurant doing doubles. But like, yeah, it's a bit different now. I guess we work like 2 or 3 shifts a week in the restaurant, which I think is enough for us to like, you know, keep our hand in, and also enough for us to be away that the management team don't feel like we're always here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So I do a lot more outside kind of things now, and events and stuff, and just really doing a lot of the Scotch Bonnet Jam, really trying to get people to know about that. But yeah, I think it's the happiest I've been. Like working in the hospitality industry for a long time, and I think that reflection was a lot of it through lockdown. I think I've slowed down a bit more. You know, I'm not going a million miles an hour as I was before, and you can't carry on sustain doing that. And manage myself a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of asked that selfishly because with this podcast, it's like I'm constantly thinking about what the next guest coming on, prepping the questions for you guys. Like it's getting to the stage and it's like becoming like I basically do 7 days a week on it. And part of me is like, oh, I need to. I don't know, as in like not like full hours, but like I may having to do a bit and bobs here or editing or you know, it's like I'm constantly on. And part of me is like I need to switch off, but as soon as I try and do fuck all, like I just start thinking about it, and then. But I think that's when you get to the point. I don't know what you said. It's like it becomes normality. Final question, guys, and this is another one I asked to guests, but it elicits interesting answers. But if you could have like a tattoo there for our listeners or anyone else just starting their journey that they've basically got to see like every day, or like just a one sentence, or it could be a motto. That they're going to kind of have to look at every day, whether that's going through hardship or triumph or struggle. Like, what would it be and why?
Amore.
So I don't know what that means. It's a bit embarrassing.
Love.
What about yours, Dan?
So a tattoo that you'd have.
I've actually got it on my arm.
Oh, you do have it on your arm.
Amore.
Yeah.
I don't know. A tattoo. So what? As in, like they would look at it every day
Because
to get like
if
motivation
there's
from it.
if there's love throughout the whole restaurant, then it's a happy place to be.
I see.
Yeah, true. I don't know. Sorry, that's a really. I don't actually know. What would you?
I've already got mine.
I'm not. What I know that we've said like this. I'm just gonna say anyone and everyone because I think that's the one.
Well, yeah, there you go. There's no right answer. It's just it is. Yeah, anyone and anyone. I suppose if that's
anyone and everyone because it means you're all welcome.
So anyone and anyone plus love equals kind of 1251. I think that's a nice way to end.
Yeah. There you go. There we are. Perfect.
Yeah, bosh. Guys, that was epic. And to our listeners, like get to. I don't. There's not a store. Is there a store list for the? Because I was trying to find it the other day. Is there a Sainsbury's store list?
It's like it's in every Sainsbury's that's not a Sainsbury's local. There you go.
Sainsbury's Superstore.
So it's in all the superstars around the country, but it's not in a local.
Right, that's why. Yeah, I went to the local. That was my issue. But yeah, anyway, people must just get your hands on it. It's 10 out of 10 delicious.
Thank you very much.
Cool. I'm just gonna hit stop, and if you just